Hello there. This is day 34 for the 90-day series that we have initiated, where we are building our mind muscle connection through putting ourselves onto the spontaneous situations to talk about. Alright. So today, let's pick something. Happiness. See, happiness. We humans are the only rational being, as far as I know. Means animals cannot be critically aware of what would lead to what in terms of being happy. Okay, not critically. I mean, they might know based upon the conditioning that they might have got into, but they are not aware of the underlying mechanism of why does they feel happy the way they do. All right, especially when they get the food or something. All right, keeping them aside, humans, we make every possible attempt to be happy, but we end up being sad. Why? Here's why. Uh, we find ourselves into negative affective states where we feel negative emotions. For example, being sad, feeling scared, anxiety, anxious, or fear, or any other negative emotion. All right. So, in order to cope with that, we we act out to feed our sensory organs. Eyes, we watch something so that we might feel good, we might feel happy. We taste some food so that through the tongue as a sensory organ we will feel happy. We likewise tactile sensation we feel in order to feel happy. Likewise smell. Likewise ears, we watch some we hear listen to some music or etc to feel happy. But in order to do this, we take ourselves from those core activities that we should work upon. Means the direct resolution of the area where the problem lies, rather than tackling it right there, which is being or which is the main cause for us to feel that way. Rather than identifying and working upon that, what we do is we get ourselves step aside and start feeding these sensory organs, which eventually make us feel bad or being sad, and being sad, of course, in order to in the search of being happy, we end up being sad. So what we need to understand here is that when we engage ourselves into these sensory pleasures, these are not something that leads to happiness, that leads to pleasure. There's a difference between experiencing pleasure and experiencing happiness. These only lead to pleasure, and pleasure is always experience based. These sensory organ based, sensory pleasure we call it. But happiness is something which is more fundamental. Rather than getting ourselves aside, getting our attention aside and feeding these sensory organs, what we can do is that we can take our attention back in order to put it right upon the area of where the problem lies, area of problem where the problem lies, and evaluate that problem, go into a slight precursor of what leads to that certain problem. For example, if we are not able to solve some problem in our academics, so what we do is that we go beyond, like we get ourselves aside and start doing something. Even when I was a college student, I used to feed myself something pleasurable so that I could feel happy. But eventually always ended up being sad, because the time that I could have put in order to directly resolve the problem where the problem was lying, I ended up wasting my time into engaging into the activities which must have gave me a dopamine spike for short term, but in the long run the problem lies right there. And that again, as long as soon as my attention goes there, the same problem just makes me even more sad. Now I'm double sad. Why? Because earlier I was sad because I was not able to get that problem solved, but now I'm sad because I have wasted a lot of time as well. So rather than chasing pleasures in order to cope with the problems, what we can do is that we can identify the area where the problem actually lies and then work upon that. That is what we called the direct resolution, directly resolving the problem, so that the problem will get eliminated right from its foundation, rather than getting our attention shifted through feeding any of the sensory organs. So sensory organ is a temporary thing, and happiness, I mean pleasure is a temporary thing, and happiness is more fundamental. And we need to be very sure, very very clear, like what activities are being practiced which are feeding our pleasures, and which activities would feed our fundamental happiness. The distinction is clear. We should not, it is not recommended to I mean, as per me, I'm not sure what does the therapeutic counselors do suggest. I mean, they might use this feeding pleasurable experiences, feeding pleasurable senses as well, in order to cope with those psychological anxious or distressed filled situations. But that might be for the short term only. But I'm not sure about what to do those people do. But yeah, if you want to get this done and we want to be genuinely happy, then happiness is what we need to chase.